one of the benefits, one of the values of going from software to product and being able to relate to engineers, it's the same core principle looking elsewhere at other business stakeholders. As you look to at a Home Depot, right, very vertically structured, right? I got bosses on bosses on bosses on bosses. And my ability to relate to whatever level and tell a story at whatever level that they are so that they understand the root problem in a short amount of time without going into too many details. To me, that's where the art of storytelling comes about.
Welcome to the Forward Slash. I'm your host, James Carmen, and today we have with us Ryan Donnelly. He is a manager of product management at the Home Depot, where he helps lead strategic initiatives for making checkout smoother and more secure for millions of customers. He actually got his start in software development, including a stint here with us at Callibrity. Yeah, all right, cool. Before earning his MBA and making the jump into product management. I got to be careful. I don't want to say project management because I know product that's taboo. From there, he went to a startup as the second full-time employee, helping grow a suite of SaaS products. These days, Ryan brings that same entrepreneurial. Thanks for adding that word entrepreneurial. I think did you know I have a hard time saying that? Entrepreneurial mindset to one of the largest retailers in the world, focusing on payments innovation and driving meaningful results. Welcome, Ryan.
Yeah, thanks for having me, James. So very excited to be here. I will say first that stint at Callibrity was very formidable to my career as well as to my role or my transition into product management. Provided me tons of excellent background and actually where I really gained a lot of interest in the role itself.
Yeah, because Callibrity, we're very heavy on the kind of the craft side of software engineering. We focus very much on that, and then you go on and you're like, okay, I'm going to go to product management. Like, we didn't scare you away from software engineering, did we?
No, not at all. I can get into my why on making the transition if you'd like. Though I don't know if I feel like we're missing the intro with a nice solid dad joke or a nice solid, corny joke about my career or my background or my stint at Callibrity, what have you.
I did look up one. I came up with one. So I was at a bar the other night, and this carpenter walks in, right? And he's got his ladder with him. And I was like, what the heck are you bringing a ladder to a bar for? And he's like, well, because I heard the drinks were on the house.
Only one way to get them. You got to escalate, right?
You got to have a way to get up there. Okay, yeah.
Well, I mean, just a quick little plug here. If you don't have a good ladder, Home Depot is a great place to get one.
Absolutely.
They got tons of ladders at HomeDepot.com, even more selection. And as you go through checkout, and you pay for that said ladder, either on .com or in store, please let me know how the experience is. My guess is that it's pristine.
It's fantastic. One thing I do love is I signed up for I forget what the program is, but where you basically register and you put your card in, and I don't ever have to keep my receipts anymore. That's all digital. It's in the app, so that's very convenient. I love that aspect of the checkout process.
Yeah, happy to get into that. That is what we refer to as credential on file. You don't need to use your card or have your card present for you to pay, either online or in store. And that ability to track your payments, that's all based on that specific payment being used.
Very cool. Payments is everywhere, right? We payments are everywhere, I guess, is a better way. Well, you can probably say it either way, but you have to deal with payments as any company. So you're at Home Depot and you're manager of product management. Tell me a little bit about that role and what you do there.
So I currently support 4 teams across payments. So that includes the device or the PIN pads in store and the software that runs them. Our account management team, which includes our private label credit cards, our ability to provide our customers an opportunity to apply for a credit card and use that credit card internally at Home Depot only, or apply for different installment loan products so that they can purchase a product, a ladder, a very nice ladder, and pay it off over the course of 6 months. No interest, that type of thing, or whatever promotional opportunity we're able to give them. That's the account management team. I also work with a legacy authorization service. So we call that our CAS team. You mentioned earlier the conversation that we had previously in which we talked about payments being everywhere. You do have to accept payment no matter what kind of company you are, and the degree to which you handle that software in-house versus pay for it externally. I think that's the big difference here, right? So payments is in house at Home Depot, meaning we develop the software that does the authorizations and the clearing and all this kind of like payments, um, all those steps that are required for us to process customer payment, and that is all done in house. And it's very interesting because you look at a company like Stripe or whatever, and they're charging like 2.5%. I mean, you take that 2.5%, we still have to pay fees for interchange rates and whatever else as you normally would across the network. But so you start to dive into that fee that they're charging you, and most of it is the interchange. So the amount of money that they're making off of you, the percentage they're making off of that 2.5% is very small. And then when you compare that to a company the size of Home Depot, 160 billion, I think is what we reported last quarter or last fiscal rather. Um, the amount of payments that goes through that 160 billion absolutely makes sense for us to have a team in house and provide us the flexibility to develop what we need to develop and operate how we need to operate, and ultimately to meet our customer where they want to pay.
It kind of seems like a no-brainer for probably smaller companies that you use someone like a Stripe or whatever to do your processing and to do your payments. But there's a certain scale. Is there kind of a benchmark or a known level in the industry that's like, okay, once you reach this level, you're going to want to start rolling up your sleeves and digging in and building your own payment systems for your company? Is there kind of a known level there?
That's a really interesting question. I don't know the level, but I will say when we go to payment conferences, the peers that we'll see there are the Targets, the Walmarts, those types of behemoths that it just makes sense for them based on an annual revenue perspective to just keep everything in house.
Your own credit cards. So, kind of, what's the thinking for Home Depot? Why, it's probably there's probably quite a bit of overhead there to put your own branded cards out there and be able to support that and all that. What's the kind of the business motivation behind providing that type of service for your customers?
Sure. So we do have private label credit cards, as we call them, and a series of vendors that support us in that regard. The reasoning or the logic behind it is multifold. The first is we want our customers the ability to use a piece of credit card, or a credit card, and a line of credit to pay for their things at Home Depot in an as easy fashion as possible and seamless as possible. As a part of that, we want to provide them the best deals as possible. So from a private label perspective, we're able to give back to the customer, right? We already have very low prices, and that's Home Depot's MO. We're able to give back even more to the customer by removing that interchange aspect, right? So when you go with a major label credit card, you are paying more per transaction from the merchant perspective than if they use a private label credit card. Kind of keeps everything, as you call it, closed loop in the payments industry. It's all in house, right? These credit cards are branded for Home Depot. They can only be used at Home Depot. From the pro perspective, we also offer different pro house, like what we call our pro house account. So the ability for a pro to open up a line of credit directly with Home Depot and makes their transaction even more seamless than if they were to just have a Home Depot credit card.
Oh,
The
nice. Yeah.
the pro space is a really interesting one, I will say, because you have typically when you look at the pro. First off, James, have you been to a Home Depot like at 9 a.m. over in the pro space?
Maybe like on one of those Monday holidays, like your Memorial Days or something. So they may not be as busy as a normal weekday, but that's when I would be going when the wife's like, "Hey, we should do this honeydew list item today." Oh, great. Yeah.
If you don't remember, then you probably haven't because it is wild. It's like a party. So Home Depot has actually last year, Ted Decker implemented CEO, implemented a return to store or get in the store program. And what that requires is Home Depot associates to go into the store and shadow or work for a day um, in any different function that they're interested in or that might assist that store. Last time I was in the store, which was just a matter of weeks ago, I sat at the pro desk just to understand how everything operated from a software, payments, checkout perspective. And 9 a.m. hits, and it is like a party in there. People are coming in and like giving each other hugs, like the associates and the customers are all giving each other hugs. And the thing that interests me so much is these are just like the guys that come day in day out. They're just runners. They come in to get the product. They go back to their um, whatever job they're on, right? And they're not even the ones paying. They're not the ones that are, but they're not the ones paying. And it's just amazing the community that they've built in this one store.
I just noticed this, and we don't do video for our podcast, but behind you there is it looks to be an orange apron hanging up behind it. So is that a Home Depot apron?
It is a Home Depot apron. It is a Home
I
Depot
love
apron. Yeah,
it.
and that
Nice.
is it's funny. You'll see that a lot in on video calls. Just different associates, or as we call them, aprons. Right? If you are not a contractor, if you are a Home Depot employee. So
That's a trip.
yeah, yeah. I mean, I probably have. I've been at Home Depot for 3 years now, and I may have 9 to 10 aprons already.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah, I mean every event, everybody gives out aprons, and it's branded, and it's fun. It's fun.
That is cool. I love the connection you guys maintain to the sales floor, like being able to do that and get out and be among the customers and see them interacting with the things you're building. I really think that's awesome. I was at Spring Conference or Spring One Conference in DC one time, and Home Depot. Some gentleman from Home Depot happened to be there, and this is one program that I was like, it just blew me away. I was like, that's really cool. They were talking about how they can take folks, from the sales force. So they might be, Bill from the paint department, and they'll say, "Hey, Bill, you ever thought about a career in software engineering?" Oh yeah, I tinkered around. All right, well, through this program, they have their own program for training these people. They'll get them up to speed and build them into software engineers and train them and educate them and become software engineers. And I think you pointed out a really cool thing is that's a great way. Like they understand the customers because they came from the sales floor. I think that's just fascinating. I mean, I don't know, am I missing something about the program? That's just my just brief recollection of what they do.
That's exactly it. And to me, the same root or underlying reason behind the Get in the Stores program is all rooted in that, and that's we want to provide the ability for any apron, any worker of Home Depot to empathize as much as possible with the customer, to meet them where they are and serve their needs, right? And that's it. And you kind of start with that, start with that core principle of Home Depot, and everything kind of just stems from there.
That's very cool. Yeah, I love that. I was like, it's kind of blew my mind that they number one they could do a training program like that, like literally taking somebody out of zero experience and get them. And I think it was like a 12, 16 something. It wasn't a long duration. They were boot camping these folks, getting them up to
Oh yeah,
speed really quickly.
oh yeah. Actually, there was an associate who was on one of the teams that reports through me, and that's how she got her start. And she is an absolute rock star.
That's
I
awesome.
mean, it's one of those things. There's a little bit of hand holding as they get up to speed, and but her ability to understand a problem, empathize with whomever's probably feeling that problem, come to a resolution and code the problem. Like that's what you want out of an excellent engineer, in my opinion. And I that kind of is a root in why I love product management, and what are the roles that I think product managers need to play, which I'm sure we'll get into. But if you're not providing that North Star and being very, very clear in your message as to what needs to be built, what it solves, and being able to tell stories around it, like if you if you are clear in that regard, provides your engineers the ability to go out and be creative in their solutions and make sure to solve the problem based on the entire context, and not just like you need this if statement, this then statement, and then this, like getting very tactical in how to actually build it. So I think it all stems from that empathy of and context of the problem that you're trying to solve at that time.
Yeah, it's interesting. So the associate you were talking about, I mean, like the same thing, the it factor that made her a good person on the sales floor and being an associate helping customers. It's the same thing that makes you a good software engineer, and that's really just problem solving. And I've found that when we bring the they call them like non-traditional type folks out of the industry that are not in the industry into the industry, the folks that are in those jobs where they kind of can get problems thrown at them just randomly, they tend to be really, really good software engineers. And you may know this gentleman since you might have worked with him, but we had a guy that works at Callibrity. His previous job was in HVAC. So, and you can imagine you show up at a customer's house. Okay, what's wrong? I have no idea. Then you have to kind of triage the situation and figure it out. It's that core problem solving ability that really makes people good software engineers. And the code it's syntax at that point. How am I going to embody the solution to this problem?
I completely agree there. I mean, if you start to pull back and ask the four whys or six whys, whatever it is, right? you're going to somehow get to the same why, which is, and to your point, HVAC, I need to problem solve.
Yeah. You transitioned, as we were talking earlier, from kind of a software engineer, kind of architect or whatever, into product management. What do you think? Like, how has that impacted how you view what we do? Have been on kind of both sides of that coin, so to speak. How does that change your perspective?
I've always wanted to be on a team, right? I'm a big team guy. I kind of view the product manager as the coach of the team, if you will. And I've always enjoyed that role. As the coach, it means you get to be very strategic and offer your team a competitive edge, helping train, get them up to speed, and then you can kind of call the plays. And based on that training and the context that you provided them, you see your guys execute. During my time at Callibrity, as I mentioned, I was working on a client that had some great product managers. They were like far and above anything else I've seen in the industry, and I really embodied the way that they approached the team and solving problems. And I loved how they, a good product manager got the team behind them, got them the information that they needed, and set them off to run with it. Right. The other reason is, ultimately, I'd like to run a business, and I find it's the same skill sets. You walk back up 6 whys, and to me, the ability to set people up for success by providing them the full context, informing them of the why, making sure to over communicate and really be very clear in the expectations. What your OKRs are going to look like, what your key performance indicators are look like, the metrics that need to be hit to prove that you are on the right path. If you can set those up and be very thoughtful and strategic about those, then that provides a good engineer the ability to run damn near all the way, right? You set them off to the races and they're good to go. It was during my time at Callibrity that this was a very formidable, or it was a very formidable time because of those specific product managers on those teams, and also actually some research I was doing with the producer Dylan, just on Kaizen. Kind of fell in love with the idea of continuous improvement, and I saw the overlap of the two between continuous improvement and the product role, and that for me just kind of set in and became like a core principle and just a core way that I look at life. Now that was a very long-winded way to give you a why, but I'll get into the value that I think it delivers. I think it provides an amazing impact to engineering stakeholders if you can first off, enable them to see the North Star, and also shield them from questions or any kind of noise that detracts them from reaching that North Star, or continuing to pursue to that North Star. So my ability to start and have an engineering mindset has allowed me to kind of put myself up and be cover for them. It ultimately, I feel like it has allowed me to be more of a Swiss Army knife on the team in that regard. So like more of a technical product manager, as you call them. I think the other thing is at Home Depot, the way we approach product in general, or just the development life cycle, is through the 5Ds, right? So you're define, design, discover, develop, deliver. And I think all across those, having the ability to dive into develop, that portion of actually coding, and then pop my head up and look across all 5Ds, I think it's just been it's been very beneficial for me.
Good product managers uh, that I've found in the past, where when they involve the team in some of that kind of critical thinking and problem solving, and how can we, you know, meet this need for the customer better, and and involve the team in that aspect of it. I think that's important, not just for getting the best outcome, but also just kind of, let's face it, software engineers, if all you ever do is, okay, ticket shows up in my face, clackety 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 on a keyboard, ding, done. Like, if that's just your job every day in, day out, it's not terribly rewarding, especially for folks who, they're not driven and they don't dig that stuff. I'm one of those weirdos that, like, I do like coding, but I mean, it can be monotonous at times. So I think that allowing some creativity to happen from, kind of in both directions, right? It's not just feeding like, hey, I'm the big smart product person, you go build what I say. That bi-directional communication, I think, is very important, and good ones do that. Do you feel like that you have an advantage because of your background in software engineering, that you're probably more amenable to that than maybe some of your counterparts?
Being able to technically understand and relate and empathize with an engineer as how they're approaching that OKR, which feels like something that can never be reached. It feels so abstract that it's not even possible. making that connection, I think, is where a technical product manager can really move strides for the team.
Yeah, and I would imagine that your experience as a software engineer, one of the things that makes us struggle, meaning is a difficult thing in software engineering, deriving meaning from your work. A lot of times we're not exposed to the why. Like what, like, okay, I see I'm developing this module, or I'm doing this, I'm writing all these tests, or whatever I'm doing, but like ultimately, how am I impacting someone's life? How am I making someone's life better? And telling that story of like, okay, we're implementing this new credit card product from Home Depot, but that's so that da 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 da, right? That why behind it. I think that's really important. It helps us, when you are working those late nights, you kind of, if you understand the why, it makes it a little easier that like, hey, what I'm doing actually does have a meaning behind it, has an impact in someone, I'm helping someone. So I think that's kind of cool.
100%. If you look at just any kind of corporate structure, it's like it might feel to that engineer that some guy in some ivory tower is like, "Hey, do this," with some arbitrary deadline. And if there's no ability to tell the story from that why all the way down to the why we need to code this tiny widget, for lack of a better term,
Mm-hmm.
then everything can be lost, and then your outlook on those late hours becomes negative versus positive.
Yeah. One of the things we love about, this one of the things I love about this podcast is, through our experiences at Callibrity, we engage with tons of different industries, tons of different people from those industries, and see these unique challenges and everything. When it comes to Home Depot, what are some of those kind of unique challenges in the payment space that you all face, that you can share?
Sure. So right now we are in the middle of a very large retirement effort. So we have some core legacy systems that are being sun down and migrating to all new platforms. I think it's the same story that almost every engineer, products manager, and like it's the same story we all face. But that's been my life for the last couple of years. Um, so as a part of that, I've developed definitely some keen insights, or what I feel are keen insights, into how I personally operate, how I like, or how I use product management and the core principles there, to help drive the team towards success.
So I know as we are talking along, you kind of brought up a few times OKRs and that sort of thing. How do you incorporate kind of those key results into, when you're driving product outcomes and for your teams? How do you incorporate those metrics? That's kind of an interesting aspect. You don't really hear a lot of teams leading with like, hey, this is the needle we're moving, and this is the why we want to move it, like starting with that. It's kind of a byproduct after the fact. They don't drive things with those OKRs a lot of times, in our experience, or at least in my experience that I found. Tell me a little bit about that.
Sure. So I will say, as a any typical retirement effort, you're kind of just like, I need to move X from Y box to Z on in the cloud, right, or whatever it is.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel like so many times when that's the approach, first off, you're just doing a lift and shift, and it feels like throwaway work, or not throwaway work, but it's just mundane work. It's just, I'm just rewriting this over here. I will say, as a part of this retirement effort that we've been a part of, what I've found is that it's incredibly important to actually put the time in to doing the product discovery, because there
Okay.
are so many assumptions that are being made when you, again, you talk about moving X application on Y server to wherever else. You're making assumptions that you just need to make it look the same, and without doing the necessary product discovery, you don't even know if this team's actually using this still, if it's providing the value to them that we originally thought it was. And so, to get to your point on OKRs, starting with the discovery aspect, you can start to derive what those OKRs should look like for a good product, right? That was the existing legacy service. And then from there, you can build your new product to actually match those objectives and key results. And the good news is you have a head start, because you should already have metrics in place. And if not, hopefully it's pretty easy to get them in there, because you got a working code base, right? You got a working system that theoretically, you just got to take a little bit of time from the discovery aspect to throw those metrics in there and start to build your observability and visibility into that specific piece of software. So I think that was one of the things that we've done, or one of the one of the core things that we focused on as a part of this retirement effort is like, what are we doing? How many times are we doing it? Do we need to focus our time on it? Because we're under a time crunch for this retirement effort. So if it's not worth our time, it's not valuable to us based on the use, based on our previous assumptions. Then why do it?
Mhm. Yeah, it's interesting. You bring up an interesting aspect, and so when we're doing, legacy migration to a new code base or whatever, or anytime we're upgrading, modernizing, whatever you want to call it, there's always that, kind of the the term feature parity, right? Like do exactly what that system used to do. And I love the idea of taking a fresh look at it, doing a product discovery again. Do we feel like, maybe because as you were saying, like some of the aspects of the old products, the legacy product that's still there, they're almost like they're unnecessary now, and nobody uses it anymore. Today, a modern software engineering shop would know that you need to kind of cull those things out of the system over time. You kind of prune your system, curate it, and make sure the code stays clean. Do you feel like that aspect was we didn't do that in the past, and that's why there's kind of these leftover things that are just like, no, just keep driving forward, don't go back and clean things up, just keep going forward. Do you feel like that was kind of the mindset before, and we've kind of turned a corner?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, if you look at a large company, right, they want you to focus on the value generating software, right? And it's very hard, in my opinion, to show value by going back and pruning and doing your code cleanup, right? So many times there are concessions made, and yeah, we're going to come back and do this. When you get 10, 15 years down the road, it's very obvious when something didn't you didn't come back and do it. Actually, I shouldn't say it's very obvious. It's not obvious at all, and that's why discovery is valuable in this regard. But yeah, I think it's to answer your question. I think it's because it's hard to show value for doing the pruning or the cleanup after the fact.
I mean, we look at, I mean, Uncle Bob and Clean Code and like the Accelerate book. I think that we're starting to educate the industry more that these things do actually matter. Quality matters. Like, the code does matter. So, do you feel like the industry is latching on to that idea and getting it? I know there's always going to be a aspect of eye rolling when we say that, because of course it's kind of self serving that we just get to go tinker and do things that aren't actually adding dollars to the bottom line visibly. I get it, but like, do you feel like the industry is understanding and coming alongside us geeky software engineers and understanding that aspect of quality and maintenance along the way?
It's definitely a topic that needs to be taken into account. You should always put your best foot forward and always focus on your work, right? However, I mean, think of your years as a software developer. You know, when you started, if you could go back and rewrite the things that you first wrote in your first 5 years of being a software engineer, like you would 100% do it now because you know how things can, how to make things more abstract, make things more reusable, make things more clean, etc. So I kind of think it's like that. I mean, everybody's growing. We're not paying a bunch of 25-year software veterans, right? Because you can't. That's impossible to do. So I think it's just by nature of how teams are made up. Typically teams have senior, and then they're supposed to do the code reviews and make sure everything looks clean. But can they read through all code? I don't think it's plausible to expect that you're only going to have clean code, right? So what can you shoot for? I think if you can start to gear up metrics around, what looks good for your team, what good looks like for this specific team in this specific space with this specific makeup, I feel like that's where you can kind of gauge again that question of what good looks like.
I know you were talking about a couple weeks ago when we prepared for this episode, the kind of that the art of storytelling and how that's super important for product development and product engineering. Can you talk a little bit about that? Because I thought that was a really interesting thing. I hadn't really heard anybody talk about that out loud before.
One of the benefits, one of the values of going from software to product and being able to relate to engineers, it's the same core principle looking elsewhere at other business stakeholders, and as you look to at a Home Depot, right, very vertically structured, right? I got bosses on bosses on bosses on bosses, and my ability to relate to whatever level and tell a story at whatever level that they are, so that they understand the root problem in a short amount of time without going into too many details has proven to be very helpful for me. And some of the peers that I look up to are so good at it, right? The ability to take a step back and understand, and it kind of goes back to the core principle that I even mentioned from a Home Depot perspective of being able to meet our customers where they are. And
Yeah.
it's the same way for, if I'm in a room with some VP and I need to explain some very detailed process that they have no idea even happens, like how do I do that well, it's through telling a story. And in my opinion, the best way to tell a story is put them in the perspective of somebody that is going to go through that route. Now that gets very hard for back end systems. So can so it's helpful to then personify the data, personify the systems. And in doing so, I think to me, that's where the art of storytelling comes about. Your
Okay.
ability to relate, and then your ability to personify and tell a story from start to finish to get buy-in to provide an understanding of the problem at hand and the potential solution.
Yeah, I think a lot of us, hardcore geeks, it's part of a struggle of us when we grow up in the industry is, we live at that, very, very minutia level detail, optimizing code here and there, big O notation kind of thing, right? Like that's our world. And we have to get into a serious flow state and even to deal with something like that, right? um, when we're trying to talk to those business folks, the pointy-haired bosses of the world, so to speak, it's like we were like, well, actually, the B tree algorithm, like we want to talk at that level, because that's our world, right? So yeah, I think it's as you grow up in the industry, learning that aspect of that storytelling. I hadn't heard it really articulated that way, but I like that. I'd love to maybe talk about the future. And one thing that kind of came to my brain here as we were talking is like, what we're doing right now, we feel like we're the modern software engineer, we're doing it right. However, what do you think, just like we're doing right now, like you're doing right now, you're replacing legacy systems, do you feel like in 40 years that the same type of activities are going to be going on in 40 years, and they're going to be looking back at what we're doing and like, what were those idiots thinking? Same thing we kind of think we say, when we're looking at the legacy systems. Are we doing it so right now that we will avoid that in the future, or is it just this constant cycle of renewal in our industry?
I think we'll be doing it in the future, but I think at a much different level. It'll be much higher, right? Probably more system oriented or collections of systems versus, where we're looking at single files and multiple files to rewrite. Um, so I think, I think it'll become more, we're at a very foundational level. I think artificial intelligence and everything else will allow us to continue to step up and focus on the bigger and bigger and bigger problems as strategic thinkers and problem solvers. And so I think, yeah, it will just continue to shift ourselves up. And in doing so, I mean, you look at history over time, right? Like that's the ability to create a tool to abstract the hard work that you were previously putting into it is it's human nature, right? We want more time to spend with our families, and how do you do so? You provide an ability to be more efficient, and that's kind of at the place we're at now. So
All right, so let's let's get into our next segment, what we call ship it or skip it.
Ship or skip. Everybody, we gotta tell us if you ship or skip.
Okay, so I highlighted a few. We came up with some ideas, and so I highlighted a few that I thought might be appropriate for our conversation. First off, getting an MBA. You mentioned that you did get an MBA. Is that all it's cracked up to be, or not?
from the soft skill perspective, yes. And what I mean by that is I was working a full time job, but then still had to sit down and force myself to focus on reading the textbook, getting my homework done, communicating with other people who I didn't want to talk to at the time, by the nature of team projects and whatnot. From the soft perspective, absolutely yes. From the information that I actually learned, I could have picked up a book on my own, but it's
Mm-hmm.
it's that those guardrails that were set up and forced me to do this. Yes, I would say ship it.
Ship it. I know for me particularly, I think if I was I don't want to say just a software engineer, but like if I was continuing on kind of at the individual contributor level, may not be as important. I think I could pick up business concepts from books to be more empathetic with and business minded, to be a better engineer for my clients or customers or employer. But for what I do now as a CTO, like I studied computer science. I didn't learn about cost of goods sold. I didn't learn about all the gross profit margins, all those things. I didn't learn about that stuff, right? I don't even think I took an accounting class in school, right? So I do think it would have been beneficial for me to learn that. And you're right. And I do a ton of reading about, leadership and all business and all that stuff. But like, I think that taking me through a structured program and knowing like, oh, here's the things you need to read, right? Like knowing who Michael Porter is, those sort of concepts that I had to like stumble across in my reading and my research, or get a book recommendation from someone. It may have done so in a more structured and probably quicker fashion. I might have gotten to where I needed to be quicker. But yeah, I think I would, if I could go back 2 or 3 years ago, I would probably tell myself, hey, go get an MBA, or at least take some business classes and understand this stuff. All right. So for our next ship it or skip it topic, I wrote down, what about like in a retail setting, accepting crypto payments, so cryptocurrency payments at a checkout register? What do you think about that?
From an industry perspective, there's definitely a push toward allowing that, and there are startups all over the place that allow for things like that, which makes complete sense, and it provides the trust factor across the network. And so I absolutely think there will be some type of play in that. It'll probably be like I touched on the private label stuff. It could be in that regard, right? Private label networks, or hopefully not, well, maybe undermining Visa and MasterCard and Amex, and then the way that they network, or have created their networks, and that's how they make their money. Like Visa and MasterCard, they don't provide a product. They just provide like a physical card or
Mm-hmm.
anything. They just provide the network for people, for banks to operate on.
Right. The rails, so to speak, right?
Exactly, yeah. Amex is different. Obviously, they do supply both the network as well as the cards themselves and the product themselves. But I think I'd be interested in that regard, more of disruption to the norm versus like disrupting a retail individual. So
yeah, so you're ship it, or
depends on the outlook, but I would say ship it. Yes.
yeah, for me, I'm an architect. We always say this. My answer is always it depends, but it doesn't really depend. I say ship it because you have to. I think the world is such that the demand is there, so I think you're going to have to do that. It's like one of those, you're going to have to check that box for your customers, because if you don't, everybody else is, right? I think that the ship has sailed on that. I think we're already kind of headed in that direction as an industry now. And this is kind of a weird aspect of me and the way I'm a bit of a Luddite, which is funny as a CTO. Crypto, I've never been. I don't own one bit of cryptocurrency. I for something about me just does not trust. Okay, yes, it's decentralized ledger, but I don't know. I'm a bit of a skeptic when it comes to crypto, and it's I don't know. I just can't latch onto it. Okay, so the third ship it or skip it is, there's a lot of buzz in the product world. I mean, there's a lot of buzz in every world regarding AI, but I think in product, it's like, oh, we don't need product people anymore. We just have AI generated stuff, and like they do our designs and do this and all. Like, where are you on that? Is that something that you would say lean into, ship it, or is this like no, skip it?
Absolutely ship it. There's always going to be the human interaction, but you look at the Atlassian tool set, right? Confluence, and then into Jira and Jira Align, and all of those different products. They're definitely leaning into it, and I see them as they are the front runner when it comes to product development lifecycle software.
Mm-hmm.
So I think if you can continue to, there's a problem with that. You got to sell your soul to the devil, as I call it, right? You got to put everything in there, and you can't use any of their tool, and you got to make that tool work for your team versus or you make your team work for that tool versus making that tool work for your team. Sometimes there's flexibility. I'm with you there, but there will be times where you need to make it work. But if you sell your soul and you go all in, then absolutely ship it, because the productivity gains are outstanding. I mean, if I can spend, for one of my product managers, if they could spend 50% of less time writing stories and working on strategy and communication and storytelling and all those other things that we're expected to do, I mean, that is incremental value that they can then generate for the team.
I'm in agreement with you on that. I think the part, again, I'm a Luddite, right? When it comes to AI, as long as the human in the loop activities are still there for where they make sense, like if you take away the fact that you went down to the Home Depot and you're watching the actual customers, how they interact with the systems you're building, and how you're helping them and making their life easier on them, like a computer can't do that, right? They can't do that the level you can, right? With that human level of empathy, that's just that they can't do that. But yes, absolutely. When it comes to like, somebody said it last, or I was at a banking conference a couple weeks ago, and the way they said it, I loved it. It was, we make our humans superhuman, right? So we still have humans, but human beings, right? We still have human beings, but we're making them superhuman with AI. So I'm just making them more effective at what they do. Like you're saying, like I don't have to spend 6 hours a week just typing out Jira stories or and all that stuff. So yeah, I'm with you on that. So ship it.
I think there are two important factors. The one is I can summarize documentation from the past, from a code perspective, from a Confluence perspective, right? The documentation, the product discovery, all the product work that we did, I can summarize it moving forward, and it's easier for me to look things up. And the second piece is I can delegate. I can then delegate to this bot to generate these things. And then that's where the human in the loop comes into play, right? You obviously got to confirm that what was generated matches your expectations, but it at least helps you with that ideation of how would I structure things if you kind of give it a prompt and then you just detail it and gear it up and then eventually fits and you put your human touch on it.
All right. We are at the point of our episode that is the most important, the most impactful for our audience, and that is what we call the lightning round.
It's time for the lightning round. Rapid fire, don't slow down. Answer quick and make it count. In this game, there's no way out. It's time for the lightning round.
Please remember there are correct answers to these questions. Are you ready?
Fired up?
Fired up. Okay. Have you ever slapped someone in the face?
Yes.
Do you like the name Charlie for a girl?
Charlie's Angels? Yes.
Have you ever been to Africa?
No.
Would you go to a movie alone?
I would. Never have.
Are your grandparents mildly rude?
Absolutely. And all the better for it.
Super Mario Brothers or Zelda?
I have a 3.5-year-old son who's on Mario, so Super Mario Brothers.
All right. Well, that was fantastic. I believe you got all the questions right from
nice.
my calculations. So 100% gold star. Fantastic. Any final thoughts or advice that you'd want to share with the audience?
Not necessarily, but I do really appreciate the time. If anybody has any questions or is looking for any follow-up conversations, like I'm a learner. I love to learn new perspectives and definitely open to it.
This has been fantastic. I really enjoyed our conversation today. Thank you to our listeners for tuning in, and thank you to everybody that makes this podcast possible. Editing, producing, all of the things. Thank you to everyone. Don't forget to subscribe, rate, and share the /podcast with your friends. If you have any ideas for topics or you would like to appear on the podcast as a guest, please email us at the/@callibrity.com. And that's CALLIBRITY. Thank you again, Ryan. It was a pleasure having you on here. It's great to see you again it's been a while. I haven't seen you in a while, but we really enjoyed it. And thanks everybody for tuning in. This has been the /, and I'm your host, James Carmen.